Hey, this is Matt O'Leary, and this is Albums at a Glance for March 2017, where I give my thoughts on a number of albums from the past month. And March was a very fruitful month for music. A lot of new releases, almost too many to keep up with, but I think I compiled some of the more notable ones, some of the more recognizable ones into this video. And I'm going to have a couple reviews coming out at the end of April, way more videos coming out as the summer begins and I graduate from grad school in beginning of May. So stay tuned for that, and thanks for sticking around. Let's get it going. In the spirit of baseball, let's lead off with a comeback album from the band Grandaddy. These guys won me over a couple years ago when I discovered the Software Slump, not sophomore, Software from 2000, and that album really just encapsulates the indie rock spirit of the time. It's been 11 years since their last album from 2006 called Just Like the Family Cat. I don't feel like this band's really skipped a beat at all. It still seems like they're going on that steady 4/4 groove on most of the songs here. Jason Little, the singer, is still articulating words with that heavy R, and he also seems to just refuse to use vibrato when he holds out notes. But seriously, I think this album holds up to any of their past work. It's just maybe not as relevant in 2017 as it was then. I like the Wilco-esque check engine with its tempo shift into the B section and those brief guitar leads before the second verse. Or the song Evermore with its stinging synth and drawn out vocal melody. That one really highlights the glitchy but anthemic sound of these guys. Last Place as an album is pretty understated. It's not going to blow you away or anything, but I like that they're not trying to be anything they're not, and it's that same easily recognizable sound they had when they started. Next up, it's the sixth album, Voids, from the Seattle alt-rock band Minus the Bear. It's been 5 years since their last one, and this album just doesn't feel like one that should have taken that long. This band's always just barely met the minimum standard for what it takes to be considered math rock, and the timing irregularities and the guitar tapping are especially scarce here. What you get on Voids is sleek and polished pop rock without much meat on the bone. I was thinking, nothing's ever stood out to me about this band, but it's been a long time since I listened to them, a long time since their last album, so maybe this time, no. The Shins have a new record. It's called Heartworms. I was hoping to review it, but I really just don't have much to say about it. James Mercer, great lyricist, great songwriter. There's no doubt about that, but how can you not compare this to the utter eloquence of some of the older albums? Songs like So Says I and One by One All Day that took the philosophical musings of a normal kid and pushed them out to the indie masses. Verbose observations and hopeful longing from an unmatched talent. Have you heard this guy sing live? He's incredible live. He's always right in the center of the pitch. Dead on. There's no wavering, there's no pitchiness. It's insane. Heartworms just feels a little bit emotionally flat to me. I am liking some of the melodies on Name for You or Mildenhall. Or Cherry Hearts. That song reminds me a little bit of Animal Collective's album Painting With. And Dead Alive has that classic Shins walking bass line and a melody that feels so familiar. But I am interested to hear what your favorite Shins album is. Mine shoots too narrow by a mile. Britt Daniel and Spoon are back with their 9th album, Hot Thoughts. This is a follow-up to They Want My Soul, which is probably one of my favorites from Spoon. And I feel like I'm in the minority on Hot Thoughts, but I didn't dig it. I feel like they were similarly picky with the production and the composition, but the songs just dynamically didn't seem to go anywhere for me, especially like I Ain't the One or First Caress. And good progressions are killed by wandering, directionless vocal lines like on the chorusless Whisper and I'll Listen to Hear It, or the lethargic snoozer Pink Up. Lots of good old-fashioned rock and roll this month. We got Spoon, we got the Shins, we got Grandaddy, but I gotta say I'm a little disappointed. Alright, here we go, one to pick up the pace. This is one of my favorite albums of the year so far from the Norwegian guitarist named something, Sondre. I have no clue, but the album's called Pleasure. And as you'd expect, Pleasure is immediate. It's right there, but it's also more rewarding with more listens. Serenading in the Trenches brings a sparse but powerful hip-hop beat and a hook that's eerily similar to Taylor Swift's song Blank Space. The song I Know Something That's Gonna Break Your Heart hops along with this very inner speaker era Tame Impala bass and synth, and Violent Game goes against these 80s pop trends to kind of introduce and mix in some car seat headrest indie rock. On the back half of this track, there's these crazy vocal yelps and soloing that kind of establish experimentation as just as big of a player on this album as catchiness. From front to back, Pleasure, man, it's got it all going on. It's sweet, it's thoughtful, it's stylish, and it's detailed. Melina Duterte just dropped a debut album, Everybody Works. It's under the name J Som. She's 22 years old. She's another just bedroom success story of the 21st century. There's an introspectiveness that reminds me of something from Alex G, especially songs like For Light or Remain. Melina's voice is kind of the thread that connects these vastly different styles across Everybody Works. There's some islandy hand drums, there's some grunge, there's some Cocteau Twins from the 80s, there's, a lot of stuff going on. I think this is agreeable. I don't think it's anything too special, but she's only 22. She doesn't have anywhere to go but forward and up, so she deserves some attention for this. This is a good debut. Tame Impala and Pond band member Cameron Avery came out with an album, Ripe Dreams, Pipe Dreams. This one's super surprising and totally diverges from that comfortable and familiar psych pop of those two bands. Instead, he's playing this swanky 1950s crooner character. He kind of pulls it off with that smooth baritone, that classiness, that ritziness, that effortlessness. Even dropping into a deep bass on the song Dance With Me. But this genre's never really appealed to me, and even if it did, I feel like this is just a cheap copy of Sinatra. The moments I prefer are the more succinct and radio-ready pop numbers like Wasted on Fidelity or Disposable. Real Estate has a new album called In Mind. I've never really been a Real Estate fan. I think my gripes are pretty common. In the world of expansive art, why would we spend time on this easy breezy Wonder Bread? But truth be told, I think this commonplace guitar pop is mainly just aesthetic. When I really tune in to the writing, I feel like there is something there, and especially on this album more than the rest of them. And I try to hold to that principle. If music is compositionally and just writing wise varied and engaging, then it deserves attention, even if it's not flashy or unoriginal stylistically. Leading off with that insanely catchy guitar line on Darling, this album just right from the get-go is sharp and crisp. I feel like it just hooked me in immediately. I actually texted my drummer friend to get an idea of those time shifts on the intro here. He came up with 9/8, 7/8, and then back to 4/4. And now when I listen to it with that in mind, yeah. Anyway, he's a genius. They managed to pull that ridiculous sequence off and still make it sound so simple and relaxed. And unfortunately for this band, I feel like they're going to continue to get passed over by some just for how easy, breezy, beautiful they are. But I really enjoy this one. I like the songwriting throughout. Way to go, Real Estate. Got a few albums left, including Mastodon's Emperor of Sand. I reviewed Sultan's Curse and Show Yourself in another video, and while I like these songs, I was hoping for something a little more aggressive, a little more off the wall on this new one. And personally for me, with bands like Mastodon or Opeth, bands that go from passion and punch to, something a little more by the numbers, comparison matters to me. That gives value to the music to have context for their entire discography. And when something is just paling in comparison to past work, and I've seen what they're capable of and they're not reaching it, that's disappointing. But it is possible to change styles and progress or whatever and still be great. Pale Communion is an example of that from Opeth for me. The perfect Mastodon album for me is Blood Mountain, definitely. I feel like the pummeling stoner and sludge riffs just intersected perfectly with the more obscure progressions. And while this one doesn't make me lose control of my body and flail around like an idiot like Blood Mountain and Crack the Sky, I think it still deserves your time. Last, we got 3 albums that to different extents kind of focus on and discuss womanhood. And culturally I think it's pretty apt time to do that. And it's certainly marketable with unsubstantiated cries for injustice at an all-time high. We got a little dose of victimhood, more ridiculous, nihilistic, and depressing victimhood. And finally, we got a much more productive, much more factual, and much more interesting exploration of the female psyche on Semper Femina by Laura Marling. And personally, I really appreciate that because not only does this album avoid that seductive and damaging idea that there's this systemic and widespread misogyny that's putting this glass ceiling on women in this country. It's just not true. And also just recognizes the differences between the male and female sexes and celebrates what makes women unique and special. And musically, again, Laura just shines as a singer and a writer. So many captivating moments scattered across this thing. The song Wild Ones is an unbelievably great vocal performance. And Wildfire just so poignantly explores how we overcome our inherited weaknesses with these facades. Wouldn't you die to know how you seem? Are you getting away with who you're trying to be? I do wish there were more tracks like the opener, Soothing. That one's got this double bass and this minimalism. It's just moving. Okay, that wraps it up for March. There were some albums that came out on the 31st, but I think I'm just going to go ahead and push those till next time. So until then, thank you so much for watching.